I never thought I'd be the guy who ended up with a cheating wife. My name is Jason, and I'm your average 30-something dude living in the suburbs of Ohio. I work in IT, and my wife, Mia, is a marketing executive at a local firm. We'd been married for 7 years, and while we weren't the couple that made everyone else gag with our happiness, we were comfortable. That was until things started to change. It started subtly. Mia became more distant, spending long hours at work. She'd come home late, often brushing off my inquiries with vague comments about projects and deadlines. The late-night texts on her phone, which she'd always quickly put away when I came into the room, were the first sign that something was off, but I tried to shake it off. Maybe she was just stressed or overwhelmed. I should have known better, but that wasn't all. She began to change her appearance. It wasn't just the usual "I'm going out with the girls" look. It was like she was trying too hard. New clothes, different hairstyles, and more makeup than I'd ever seen on her. It felt like I was living with a stranger. I remember thinking that I should feel flattered she was putting in the effort, but instead, it felt like she was dressing up for someone else. Then one day I was working from home, and Mia's phone buzzed loudly on the kitchen table. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I wouldn't even think to look, but curiosity got the better of me. I picked up her phone and saw a message that made my heart drop. "Can't wait to see you tonight at the usual spot. I miss you." I felt sick. I didn't want to believe it, but there it was. All the signs, the late nights, the new clothes, and now this proof that she wasn't just busy at work. She was busy with someone else. The name on the number didn't ring a bell, but the thought of her with another guy hit me like a punch to the gut. My mind raced as I tried to piece everything together. When she came home that evening, I was a bundle of nerves. I had to confront her. As soon as she walked in, I could see she was already rushed, but I couldn't let her slip away this time. I called her name, and when she turned around, I held her phone out to her. "Who's this?" I asked, my voice trembling. Her reaction was instantaneous. The color drained from her face, and for a split second I thought she might confess, but instead she narrowed her eyes and scoffed. "Really, Jason, you're going to invade my privacy like that? You're being ridiculous." Ridiculous. I felt like I was going to explode. I pushed further, demanding to know who the guy was and why she was texting him. She spun a web of lies, saying it was just a coworker, someone she was planning a project with, and that I was being paranoid. But I could see the cracks in her facade. The way she stammered, her refusal to look me in the eye, it felt like a slap in the face. The emotional impact hit me like a freight train. I was shocked, angry, and then crippled by sadness. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone who was capable of such betrayal. I felt like my heart was being ripped out. How could she do this to me? I had given her everything: my trust, my loyalty, my love. The days following that confrontation were a blur. I went through a roller coaster of emotions: rage, disbelief, and profound sadness. I didn't want to believe she could be capable of such deceit. I feared for our future, but I also couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to take control of this situation. I needed to think clearly about what to do next. Should I confront her again? Should I gather more evidence? Or should I just pack my bags and leave? The idea of revenge started to creep into my mind, but more on that later. At this point, I knew I had two paths before me: to fight for our marriage or to let her go. I needed to make a decision, and fast. The pain of betrayal was fresh, but I had to find a way to channel that hurt into something productive. The thought of her being with someone else, especially a smooth-talking journalist, made my blood boil. But how could I hurt her back without losing myself in the process? As I sat on the couch that night, the TV flickering in the background, I realized that this could turn into my story, too. Little did she know, I had my own plan brewing, one that would ensure she faced the public shame she so richly deserved. I needed to take a step back, evaluate my options, and prepare for the storm ahead. But I was done being the victim. I was ready to turn the tables. In the days that followed the confrontation, I found myself consumed with a mix of emotions: anger, betrayal, and a fierce determination to regain control of my life. I couldn't shake the image of Mia wrapped up with another man, someone who likely saw me as nothing more than a hurdle in his pursuit of her. Every time I thought of it, the rage bubbled up inside me, and I knew I had to do something. But what? I started doing some digging. I couldn't just sit back and let this situation happen without a plan. I needed to know who this journalist was, what Mia was up to, and how deep her betrayal ran. I needed to gather evidence and fast. I began by asking around, discreetly inquiring among mutual friends, trying to piece together what I could about Mia's new life outside of our home. It turned out that the journalist was named Mark, a guy who worked for a popular local magazine. He was known for his charm and had a reputation for being a real ladies' man, though I had never thought he'd cross into our lives. I remembered a few times when Mia had mentioned him in passing during casual conversation, but I dismissed it as just work talk. How naive I had been. One Friday evening, I found myself at a bar that Mia and I used to frequent together. I had a plan. I sat quietly at the bar, nursing a beer and pretending to be absorbed in my phone. I watched as people came and went, and my eyes kept scanning for Mia. I knew she would likely meet Mark here at some point. My heart raced at the thought, but I had to see it for myself. Sure enough, later that night in walked Mia, looking as stunning as ever. She was dressed in a tight black dress that hugged her figure, and my stomach twisted at the sight. She walked straight up to Mark, who was waiting at a booth in the back. I felt a surge of anger as I watched their body language, how she leaned in to hear him, the way she laughed at his jokes. It was as if I was watching a movie, one I wished I could turn off. I couldn't help but feel a mix of heartbreak and fury. I knew I had to act to ensure this affair was exposed for what it was. After what felt like an eternity, I gathered my courage and walked over to their booth. As I approached, the glances exchanged between them were filled with shock and panic. "Mia," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "mind if I join you?" Her eyes widened. "Jason, what are you doing here?" she stammered, clearly caught off guard. "I came to see how you were doing," I replied, forcing a calmness I didn't feel. "And it looks like you're doing just fine." Mark was trying to play it cool, but I could see the tension in his posture. "Hey man, I was just keeping Mia company while she took a break from work," he said, his tone too casual for my liking. "Right, just keeping her company." I felt the sarcasm leaking into my words. "Seems like you're a lot closer than just friends." Mia shot me a look that was a mix of desperation and defiance. "This isn't what you think, Jason. We were just talking about work," she insisted, her voice rising slightly. "Talking about work." I laughed bitterly. "Then why don't you tell me what project you're working on, because from where I stand it looks like you're working on more than just a project." The tension in the air became palpable, and I could see Mark's facade slipping. He looked between us, weighing the situation. "Maybe this isn't the best place for this," he said, trying to diffuse the situation. "Oh, I think this is the perfect place," I shot back. "Everyone here deserves to know what's really going on." I felt a sense of power wash over me. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was ready to fight back. Mia's face turned a shade of red, and her composure started to crumble. "Jason, please, let's just go home and talk about this." But I wasn't having it. "No, I think everyone deserves to know that the sweet little wife I thought I knew is out here betraying her husband with a low-life journalist." I could feel the eyes of the other patrons on us, their curiosity piqued by the unfolding drama. As she reached for my arm, I pulled away. "Don't touch me," I snapped, feeling the sting of betrayal wash over me once more. Mia's expression shifted from anger to something resembling fear. "You're making a scene, Jason. Stop it." "Am I, or are you just afraid of the truth coming out?" I shot back, raising my voice. "This isn't just about you anymore. This is about respect, and you've thrown that out the window." Mark, sensing the tide turning, stood up and tried to intervene. "Listen, man, this isn't necessary. We can work this out like adults." "Work it out? You think this is something that can be worked out? You're sleeping with my wife, and you think you can play the peacemaker." I felt the anger boiling over, and I took a deep breath to collect myself. Mia's facade of confidence crumbled, and I could see the shame in her eyes. It was a mixture of embarrassment and anger, but mostly fear. Fear of being exposed, fear of the consequences of her actions. And for the first time, I felt a flicker of satisfaction. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about exposing her betrayal to the world. I was ready to take the next step, to ensure that she faced the consequences of her actions. The idea of revenge started to blossom more fully in my mind, and I felt invigorated. As I walked away, leaving them in the booth, I knew this was just the beginning. I would gather more evidence, and I would make sure everyone knew about Mia and Mark. But I also knew I had to be strategic about it. The journalist was a public figure, and I was going to leverage that to my advantage. At that moment, I felt a strange sense of empowerment. I had a plan, one that would shift the narrative back to me. I was done being the victim. Now it was time to turn the tables. I just needed to play my cards right. After that confrontation, at the bar, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I knew I had to execute my plan carefully. Revenge isn't just about making someone feel bad. It's about making sure they understand the impact of their actions. This wasn't just about Mia's affair with Mark. It was about exposing the truth and ensuring that her betrayal didn't go unpunished. I started with some online research into Mark. He had a decent following on social media and often shared articles he had written. I found a few of his recent pieces that praised his journalistic integrity and his commitment to ethical reporting. The irony was palpable, and I could already see how I might use this to my advantage. In the following days, I kept a low profile, carefully observing Mia's movements and gathering more intel. I discovered that they had been meeting more frequently than I initially suspected. I convinced myself that I had to finish what I started, but I needed to ensure that my evidence was solid. I began to document everything: dates, times, places, and conversations I overheard. One evening, I decided to follow Mia again. I parked a couple of blocks away from her office and waited for her to leave. When she finally walked out, she didn't head home. Instead, she went straight to a trendy cafe downtown. I could feel my heart pounding as I watched her walk in, and a moment later, Mark joined her at a corner table. They laughed, leaning in close, sharing a bottle of wine. The sight of their intimacy made my blood boil, but I pushed those feelings aside. I focused on my mission. With my phone discreetly in hand, I snapped several photos of them together and even recorded snippets of their conversation. They were so engrossed in each other that they hardly noticed me lurking a few tables away. Mia talked about how much fun she was having and how she couldn't wait for their next project together. My resolve hardened. I was gathering enough evidence to turn this affair into a scandal. The night of the cafe rendezvous, I went home and meticulously organized the photos and recordings, ready to unleash them at the right moment. I knew that Mark had a reputation, and if I played my cards right, I could expose him for who he really was: a deceitful journalist sleeping with a married woman. Over the weekend, I gathered everything I had and made an anonymous email account. It was time to get to work. I wrote a carefully worded email detailing Mia's infidelity and Mark's involvement, including the evidence I had collected. I made sure to emphasize how this was a breach of journalistic ethics, pointing out that he had a responsibility not only to his readers, but also to uphold certain standards of conduct. I hesitated for a moment. Was I really going to do this? But the anger flooded back. Yes, I was. She had broken our vows and shattered my trust. I was going to make sure she felt the repercussions. I hit send and watched the email fly into the digital abyss. The next few days felt like an eternity. I was on edge, constantly checking my phone for updates. I had no way of knowing when or if Mark would be notified about the email. I waited and watched from a distance, gauging both Mia's reactions and any news about Mark. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon, while I was having lunch with some colleagues, I received a notification on my phone. It was a news alert from the local magazine Mark worked for. The headline read, "Local journalist faces allegations of unethical behavior." I felt my heart race as I read through the article. It detailed how an anonymous source had provided evidence of Mark's affair with a married woman, and how the magazine was launching an investigation into his conduct. It was working. My plan was in motion. I couldn't help but feel a dark joy at the thought of Mia's face when she learned the news. The repercussions were coming, and she would be dragged down with Mark. Days passed, and the pressure mounted. Mark's articles were taken down, and he was placed on leave pending the investigation. Meanwhile, I kept my distance from Mia, letting the tension build without her knowing the extent of what was happening. I watched as she became increasingly anxious, her phone buzzing constantly with notifications and messages. I relished this power. It was intoxicating to see her uncertainty grow. Eventually, I decided it was time to confront her again. I wanted to see her reaction when the news broke. One evening, I came home early and found her pacing in the living room, phone in hand. She looked up when I walked in, and I could see the worry etched on her face. "Jason, have you seen the news?" she asked, her voice tinged with panic. "Oh, you mean about Mark?" I replied casually, trying to suppress a smirk. Her expression shifted to one of confusion, then realization. "What do you know?" "Enough to know that your boyfriend is in a world of trouble," I said, watching her eyes widen as she processed the implications. She took a step back, her confidence crumbling. "This isn't good, Jason. You don't understand. He's just a friend. This isn't what it looks like." "Really? Because it looks like you were having an affair with a married man and that this is just the beginning of his problems." I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms, reveling in her distress. She shot back with anger. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're just trying to make my life miserable because you're hurt." "Of course I'm hurt, Mia. You cheated on me. But don't try to twist this around on me. You made your choices, and now you're facing the consequences." I watched as she struggled to maintain her composure, her bravado slipping away. "You think this is over? You think I won't fight back?" I laughed. "Fight back? How are you going to fight back when the world thinks you've been sleeping with a journalist who's about to lose his job?" The confrontation escalated, and I could see the impact of my revenge beginning to sink in. The realization of her public shame was dawning on her. I knew I was being ruthless, but after what she had done to me, I felt justified. As the days passed, the investigation into Mark continued, and so did the fallout from their affair. Mia's reputation was slowly being dragged through the mud, and I was there to witness it all. I felt a sense of empowerment, knowing that I had orchestrated this. It wasn't about just hurting her. It was about making her understand the gravity of her actions and the consequences that followed. I had taken control of my narrative, and I was determined to see it through to the end. But even as I relished the unfolding drama, I couldn't shake off the lingering sadness. Underneath it all, I still mourned the loss of the life we once shared. The betrayal was deep, and while revenge felt good, it didn't fill the void left behind by Mia's infidelity. I told myself I wouldn't look back, but I knew that underneath the anger I was still grappling with the pain of betrayal. I had set everything in motion, but I wasn't finished yet. I had a few more cards to play. Mia would face her reckoning, and I would ensure she never forgot the choices she had made. It was time to see how far this would go. As the investigation into Mark's actions unfolded in the news, I watched with a mix of satisfaction and sadness. Mia had become a ghost of her former self. Where once she was confident and assured, now she was frazzled and anxious, constantly checking her phone for updates and news alerts. I knew she was scared, and I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of justice for the pain I was inflicting. The revenge I had planned was coming to fruition, and yet with each passing day I felt a gnawing emptiness inside me. Mia began to wear her anxiety like a second skin. I'd never seen her so on edge. Her late nights had turned into sleepless ones spent pacing the floor, and I found it hard to take satisfaction in her distress. I was bombarded with feelings of anger and betrayal, yet a part of me still missed the woman I had loved, the one who would laugh at my jokes and curl up on the couch with me on lazy Sundays. It felt surreal to see her in such a vulnerable state, yet she had brought this on herself. One afternoon, as I was working from home, I overheard her on the phone, pacing around our living room. I caught snippets of her conversation, and it was clear she was speaking to someone at the magazine where Mark worked. "I don't know what to do. I can't believe this is happening. I had no idea he was involved with someone else," she said, her voice cracking. I felt a pang of guilt, but I quickly brushed it away. She had chosen to betray me for this man, and now she was facing the reality of her choices. Mia eventually realized that she needed to take control of the narrative and reached out to me, hoping to salvage what was left of our marriage. I watched as she approached me one evening, her demeanor shifting from frantic to desperate. Jason, can we talk, please? I pretended to be busy scrolling through my phone, but her pleading tone got to me. What do you want to say, Mia? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. I want to apologize for what I did. I know I messed up. I got caught up in something that spiraled out of control. I never meant to hurt you, she began, her voice shaky. Really? Because it sure felt like you were having a great time with Mark when I saw you at the cafe, I shot back, my anger flaring. I know, and I'm ashamed. I was trying to find excitement and I got lost in it. It wasn't supposed to be serious. I thought I could manage it, but it got out of hand. I realize now that it wasn't fair to you or to us, she said, tears forming in her eyes. Spare me the tears, Mia. You knew exactly what you were doing. You don't just stumble into an affair, it's a choice. I replied coldly, my guard still firmly in place. She looked down, disappointment etched across her face. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want to try to make this right. I love you and I want to work through this. Love, is that what you call it? Because it certainly didn't feel like love when you were with Mark. I replied, my voice low but laced with bitterness. You've shattered my trust, and fixing that isn't going to be easy. I'll do whatever it takes, she insisted, her voice filled with desperation. Just please don't throw everything we had away because of one mistake. I felt conflicted. On one hand, a part of me wanted to believe that she was genuinely remorseful, but the other part, the part that had been hurt deeply, was reluctant to let her back in. How can I trust you again? How do I know this won't happen again? I know I need to earn your trust back, she said, her voice breaking. But please just give me a chance. I'll prove to you that I can be better. As she spoke, I felt a wave of emotions crash over me. I wanted to believe her, but the thought of her betrayal still loomed large in my mind. It was a struggle to reconcile the love I once felt with the pain she had caused. While I was preparing to make her pay for what she had done, I still felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild what had been lost. But then I remembered my plan, how satisfying it would be to expose her and Mark, not just for my own sake, but as a way to ensure she faced the consequences of her actions. I was torn between the potential for reconciliation and the desire for revenge. After a long pause, I finally said, "You need to understand, Mia, that the road to forgiveness is long and hard. Trust doesn't come back overnight, and I'm not ready to just forget what you've done. You'll have to show me you can change." I watched her take a shaky breath, nodding her head. "I will, I promise." After that conversation, I felt a shift in our dynamic. Mia began to try harder, showing up at home earlier, doing little things to make amends, and even apologizing to me without prompting. At first, I was cautiously optimistic, but the darker part of me still reveled in the idea of taking her down a notch. The investigation into Mark was still ongoing, and the media was buzzing with speculation. One afternoon, I received a call from a friend who worked in local news. "Hey, Jason, you've got to see this. They're about to air a segment about Mark's situation, and it's getting juicy," he said, excitement in his voice. "Juicy how?" I asked, my heart racing. "Rumors are flying that there's more to the story, like who he was involved with. Sounds like they're going to name names," he replied, and I felt a thrill of anticipation course through me. That evening, Mia and I were sitting on the couch when the news segment aired. They started with Mark's suspension and the allegations of him having an affair. As the segment progressed, I could feel Mia tense beside me. When they finally revealed that the woman involved was a married marketing executive, I felt a rush of vindication. Mia's face went pale as she sat frozen, watching the screen. "This can't be happening," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It is happening, Mia. Looks like your little escapade is about to be out in the open," I said, watching the panic rise in her expression. The news anchor continued, discussing the ethical implications of the affair and how it had affected Mark's career. I felt a mix of satisfaction and remorse as I glanced at Mia, whose eyes were wide with fear. "I can't believe this is happening," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "You brought this on yourself," I replied, my voice low and resolute. "You need to own this, Mia. This is the reality of your choices." As the segment ended, Mia turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "I never wanted it to come to this. I didn't think it would get so out of control," she said, her voice breaking. I felt a part of me soften, the remnants of my love for her still lurking beneath the surface. But I couldn't let that part win. I had a score to settle, and I intended to see it through. I can't help you anymore. You need to figure out how to deal with the fallout from this, I said, standing up and walking away. As I left her there, I felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. This was just the beginning, and I was determined to ensure that Mia faced the consequences of her actions. But deep down, I still felt the weight of the love we had shared, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this was going to be a painful journey for both of us. I was ready to take the final steps toward my resolution, but I knew that as much as I wanted to punish her, I was also punishing myself in the process. In the days that followed the news segment about Mark's affair, the fallout was swift and brutal. Mia became a target of gossip at her workplace, and the backlash was intense. I watched as her colleagues whispered behind her back and avoided her in the break room. The once bustling office buzzed with calculated silence every time she entered. I had to admit, part of me relished the chaos. She had turned my world upside down, and now it was her turn to face the consequences. As she dealt with the repercussions, I found myself torn between satisfaction and lingering sorrow. I had orchestrated this, but as the reality of her shame became clearer, I felt a pang of guilt. Watching her struggle was like watching a slow-motion train wreck. I couldn't take my eyes off it, even as it broke my heart. One night, after a particularly rough day for her, Mia came home and collapsed on the couch beside me. She looked defeated, the weight of her actions pressing down on her shoulders. "Jason, I can't take this anymore," she said, her voice strained. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I made a horrible mistake." I turned to her and saw the tears streaming down her cheeks. Part of me wanted to comfort her, but a stronger part wanted to remind her of the pain she had caused me. "You think saying you're sorry is enough?" I snapped, my anger flaring. "You've ruined everything we built together. This isn't just about you anymore, it's about me too." She looked away, shame washing over her. "I know I messed up. I don't expect you to forgive me right away," she said, her voice trembling. "But I want to fix this. I don't want to lose you." "Fix it? How do you plan on doing that?" I challenged, crossing my arms. "You can't just erase what you did. You've put me through hell and now you want me to just forget it." "I'll do anything, Jason. I'll go to counseling. I'll be open and honest about everything," she pleaded, her eyes wide with desperation. I found myself considering her words. Maybe there was a way back, but the thought felt daunting. The anger still simmered inside me, entwined with the love I had for her. I had never imagined that I would be in this position, weighing the possibility of forgiveness against the certainty of betrayal. "Counseling?" I scoffed. "How can I trust you when I still don't know the full extent of your affair? You're asking me to put my faith in you when you've already shattered it." "I'll tell you everything." "I promise," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "Just please give me a chance." As I considered her request, I realized I needed to get to the bottom of this. I had to confront my pain, not just for myself, but for the sake of our relationship. "Fine," I said with a sigh. "If we're going to do this, we need to be honest with each other. No more lies, no more hiding." Over the next few days, we sat down and talked. It was uncomfortable, filled with awkward silences and painful truths. Mia recounted how her affair with Mark had started as a friendship but quickly escalated into something more. She spoke about feeling unfulfilled and how she had sought validation outside of our marriage. "It was a stupid mistake, Jason. I thought I could manage it, that it would be just harmless flirting," she admitted, her voice choked with emotion. "But it spiraled out of control, and I didn't know how to stop it." I listened, and for the first time since everything had happened, I felt a flicker of understanding. I still felt hurt and betrayed, but I saw a glimpse of the woman I loved beneath the shame and guilt. Yet I couldn't let my guard down completely. "Why did you think this was okay?" I asked, my voice steady. "Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you really think I'd just sit back and let you do this?" She shook her head, tears falling freely. "I thought I could keep it under wraps. I didn't want to hurt you, but I was so caught up in my own insecurities. It was selfish, and I'm sorry." We talked late into the night, peeling back the layers of hurt and betrayal. It was cathartic in some ways, but I still couldn't shake the feeling of doubt. Mia's commitment to changing felt genuine, but how could I be sure she wouldn't hurt me again? Just when I thought we were making progress, another wave of chaos hit. One morning, I woke up to a barrage of text messages from my friends. They were sending me screenshots of social media posts about the affair. Apparently, the story had gone viral, and Mark's name was now associated with Mia's in a very public way. I felt a mixture of shock and rage as I read through the posts. Everyone had an opinion, and the comment section was filled with judgment. Mia cheated and now she's getting what she deserves, one comment said. Another read, why would anyone stay with someone who betrayed them so publicly? The public scrutiny was brutal and I could see how it affected Mia. She was devastated, her face pale as she scrolled through the comments, her hands trembling. "This is a nightmare," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It's the consequence of your actions," I reminded her softly, though a part of me felt guilty for adding to her pain. "You put yourself in this position." "I know," she replied, her voice shaking, "but I didn't think it would get this far. I just wanted to feel something again, something more than the routine we fell into. I wanted to feel alive." I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to be supportive, but I also couldn't shake the feeling that her words were just excuses for her choices. "You could have talked to me. We could have worked through this together, but instead you chose to betray me." "I realize that now," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I was wrong. I should have come to you and expressed how I felt instead of seeking validation elsewhere." The day passed in a haze of emotion as we both grappled with the fallout of her choices. The public scrutiny was hard to ignore, and the weight of our situation felt heavier than ever. By evening, I found myself at a crossroads. I couldn't deny there was a part of me that still loved Mia. The thought of losing her was unbearable, and as she sat beside me, I could sense that she was genuinely remorseful. But how could I trust her again? Her betrayal had cut so deep, and I didn't know if I could move forward with the same person who had hurt me so profoundly. "Maybe we need to consider counseling," I said hesitantly, trying to find a path forward. "But it's going to take time. I can't promise that I'll forgive you quickly." She nodded, relief flooding her features. "I'll do whatever it takes, Jason. I want to make this work. I love you and I don't want to lose you." As we sat in silence, I felt an unexpected sense of hope mingling with the pain. I didn't know what the future held, but I was willing to take the first step toward rebuilding our relationship. It was a long road ahead, but maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to heal together. But deep down, I knew that the specter of Mark's betrayal would linger, a constant reminder of the choices we both had to confront. I was ready to start the journey toward healing, but I also felt the need to protect myself from being hurt again. I would tread carefully, one step at a time, and hope that in the process, I could find a way to forgive not just her, but myself for allowing this to happen. In the weeks that followed our breakthrough conversation, the path to healing felt both daunting and hopeful. Mia and I began attending counseling sessions together, which forced us to confront the layers of hurt that had accumulated over the years. It was uncomfortable, raw, and sometimes painful, but as we peeled back the layers, I realized there was more to our struggles than just her affair. Mia opened up about her feelings of inadequacy and the pressures she faced in her career. She told me about how, over time, she felt disconnected from me and our life together. I listened intently, trying to empathize, but the sting of betrayal still lingered in the back of my mind. Each session left me feeling emotionally drained, yet there was a flicker of hope that perhaps we could rebuild what had been shattered. As Mia began to share her vulnerabilities, I also took the opportunity to express my own feelings. I was scared, angry, and hurt, but I also wanted her to know that I still cared for her deeply. I talked about how her choices had impacted me, how they had shaken my sense of trust and forced me to confront my own insecurities. In one particularly intense session, I found myself breaking down and revealing just how devastated I felt. "You shattered my trust, Mia," I said, my voice trembling. "I thought we had a solid foundation, and I never imagined you would choose someone else over us." It felt like a betrayal on every level. Mia's eyes filled with tears as she reached for my hand. "I would give anything to take it back. I never wanted to hurt you, Jason." "I was so lost and confused," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I realize now just how reckless my choices were." In that moment, I could see the sincerity in her eyes, and I couldn't help but feel a twinge of compassion. It was a long way from forgiveness, but it was a step toward understanding. We talked late into the night, sharing our fears and hopes for the future. It felt like we were slowly starting to rebuild the connection that had been lost. At the same time, the fallout from the affair continued to swirl around us. Mark's career was in freefall, and as the investigation into his actions progressed, more details about his behavior came to light. Every new headline was a reminder of the chaos that had erupted from Mia's choices. I watched as he became a pariah in the industry, a cautionary tale of what happens when you throw ethics to the wind. Meanwhile, Mia was facing her own share of public scrutiny. Her colleagues were still gossiping, and the whispers echoed through our home like a persistent reminder of the affair. While it was painful to see her reputation take a hit, I knew it was a consequence she had to face. She needed to own her actions fully, and I believed that the lessons learned from this experience could help us grow stronger. During one of our counseling sessions, we discussed the importance of transparency. We need to establish a new foundation built on honesty, the therapist suggested. Both of you will need to commit to being open about your feelings, needs, and insecurities. That resonated deeply with me. For too long, we had swept issues under the rug, and it had led to resentment and betrayal. I realized that the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, and it would take time to rebuild trust. But I was willing to try if Mia was too. So we set boundaries and made agreements about our communication. I encouraged her to express her feelings rather than bottling them up, and she agreed to be honest with me about any lingering doubts or insecurities. It felt like a new beginning. As the weeks turned into months, we slowly started to find our footing again. There were setbacks, of course. Some days were easier than others, and the memory of her affair still lingered. Like a shadow, but we were both committed to healing. We learned to check in with each other regularly, to talk openly about our feelings, and to support one another through the ups and downs. Mia also took steps to distance herself from Mark's memory, reaching out to her colleagues to explain the situation and clarify that she was not involved with him anymore. She faced the backlash head-on, and in doing so, she began to rebuild her professional life. It was empowering to see her take control of her narrative rather than letting it control her. At home, we started reconnecting in ways I hadn't thought possible. We began to go on date nights again, revisiting restaurants we used to love and exploring new places together. I found myself laughing again, sharing moments that felt genuine. With each passing day, the walls between us slowly began to crumble. Yet, even amid the progress, I couldn't shake the fear that something might happen again. There were moments of doubt, times when I questioned whether we were truly moving forward or simply putting a band-aid on a wound that needed more time to heal. But I tried to remind myself that healing is not a straight line. It's a winding road filled with bumps and detours. Eventually, I found the courage to take a leap of faith. One night as we sat on the couch together, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. "Mia," I said, looking her in the eye, "I want you to know that I'm willing to forgive you. I can't promise it'll happen overnight, but I want to work toward it together." Her eyes widened with surprise, and I could see the relief wash over her. "Thank you, Jason. I will do everything I can to earn your trust back. I love you and I want to make this work," she said, her voice full of sincerity. For the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. It wasn't just about forgiveness. It was about rebuilding our life together, brick by brick, even if the foundation had been shattered. As I reflected on our journey, I realized that pain can lead to growth, and trauma can pave the way for transformation. We had faced a storm that threatened to tear us apart, but we were learning to navigate the aftermath together. I had learned the importance of honesty, communication, and vulnerability, and I hoped that these lessons would serve as a guide for our future. We weren't out of the woods yet, but we were on the path toward healing. I felt optimistic about what lay ahead. Mia had made her mistakes, and I had wrestled with my own demons, but together we were forging a new chapter, one built on resilience, understanding, and the hope of love renewed. As we sat together on the couch, I took her hand in mine, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. We would face the challenges ahead together, and I could finally see a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. It was a long road to recovery, but I was ready to walk it with her by my side.